let's just take a few minutes to review the financial highlights of 2020 and mention some of the risks and difficulties we have faced. For those who have little interest in these details, I will do my best to be brief while you reflect on how the Holy Spirit is guiding you. For the rest, enjoy the 7-minute ride. First, overall, 3 high-level items of note. There is a slight operating deficit. Camp Huron had a $15,000 surplus despite being closed for the summer, and even after covering the camp accumulated deficit, the diocese has a surplus of over $300,000. The diocesan deficit for the year is only $3,000, but let's look at some of the components in the next 3 slides. Apportionments were $31,000 less than expected. Other revenues were $194,000 higher than planned, and expenditures were $232,000 lower than planned. At this point, there would be a surplus of $395,000, but some areas need attention. Reserves of $398,000 will result in a deficit of $3,000. As in all your parishes, uncertainty was the overarching theme throughout the year for Church House. The third column shows variances mentioned on the last slide. Other revenues were $902,000, which was $194,000 better than planned, and subject to a great deal of uncertainty. Total expenditures of $3,505,000 are mostly predictable costs like salaries, general synod assessments, pensions, but various underspending of $232,000 is traceable to COVID restrictions. Now, apportionments of $2,998,000 was $31,000 worse than planned. Again, subject to the uncertainty as most parishes felt throughout the year. Reserves for $398,000 are necessary for insurance and ministry areas as needed. Let's see the next level of detail. Something new here, to show a bit of perspective and more detail by category, which are aligned with Paul's one-page financial summaries. Revenues are higher than planned by a net of $194,000, as shown on the last slide, due to the federal wage subsidy paid earlier in the year. Income from Huron Development and Capital Development Funds, interfund transfers to cover costs like the mortgage support in the Waterloo area. And those are offset by reduced contributions from ACW and lower than expected prior year apportionments. Now, ministry services spending on pensions was higher, but that was more than covered with savings on salaries, benefits, travel, and synod. Clergy benefits were less than planned by $52,000, despite the unbilled continuing education accounts for deacons. Administration and finance costs were down $40,000 due to lower office usage, minimal legal costs, and bank charges, even though we covered some insurance costs for Chapels of Ease, where contact information is missing. Ministry budgets were not able to be fully spent on youth and Indigenous programs due to the COVID restrictions. That's part of what we want to save to a reserve for future use. I'll get to that in a few minutes. Huron Church News revenues were a nice surprise, so we had $18,000 of positives. In total, then, all the positives add up to about $426,000. Let's have a look at some of these reductions. First of all, with the apportionment remittances, as I mentioned earlier, down $31,000 from what was planned. It looked a lot like it was going to be more like $250,000 during the year, so we really appreciate the efforts in parishes to catch up by year end. Now we come to the reserves in a little bit more detail. The vision implementation and staffing areas are high impact, which are basically financed through the diocesan share of CEWS, the emergency wage subsidy that was offered last year. Next is the Indigenous ministry that's been underspent in the year of 2020. So we'd like to save that and a little bit more to bolster this vital area. Lastly, and largest, is the distribution of support for parish insurance premiums. So those are the ups and downs of the $3,000 deficit. Now let's just acknowledge where things did not go smoothly. At these times, we especially need the Holy Spirit to fill us with patience and compassion for those working so very hard to provide services. Insurance premiums are a strain for many parishes. Actions are being taken to relieve some of the strain for 2021 and beyond, including a direct subsidy for the reserve from this reserve and reviewing needed coverage levels for the future. Trust reporting delays have been difficult due to process changes resulting from the COVID restrictions and recognizing that extra care has been taken to ensure their accuracy. Some recent confusion was uncovered regarding billing of continuing education amounts for deacons. The diocese has absorbed the cost in 2020 and is getting 2021 charges sorted. I will go into some CEWS details on the next slide. The distribution of the initial $1.1 million claim was based on payroll costs. Parishes received 2 months of 75% payroll subsidy. Since July, the subsidy has been based on percentage decline in operating revenues. Some parishes had little to no revenue decline, which reduced the overall subsidy for these months. The diocesan mechanism for sharing was therefore changed to address these varying revenue declines. Generally, in most parishes, donation revenues remain strong due to parishioner support, but missing revenues from fundraising events and building rentals has made it difficult to manage in many parishes. In February, we distributed $522,000 to 81 parishes in most need. We're just getting the next distribution ready, but have been delayed by missing revenue reports. So please ensure that these are done monthly. In April, the federal government extended the program into September. We are committed to applying for these and sharing those subsidies amounts as soon as possible. Going forward, communication and issue resolution will drive all our efforts for improvements. Thank you.